feel like I should have had more goals. Hi friends and book lovers. Today's video is a brainier one than usual. Welcome y'all. I hope you're ready for a accountability video for my stats and my reading goals that I announced in the beginning of the year. If you haven't watched those videos, I will link them here and down here and you can go and check them out. I released like 3 or so videos for like goals and types of books and series I wanted to read for the year of 2021, and I kind of just want to check in and see where I'm at. I originally wanted to just do like a halfway point check-in, and while I'm still gonna do that, I've been seeing some really fun videos of everyone else's stats, and while my stats are not as detailed as everyone else's stats, I still wanted to release one because I thought like I have so much fun watching them. I kind of want to see what I've been doing and see if I've been successful in anything so far. So the first objective goal I had for the year for my bookish kind of goals is to read 60 books this year. I had read like 50 something last year. I think my goal was 50, and I thought let's just give myself a little bit more challenge and do 60 books this year. I have read as of like the end of March like 24 I think I read, or 23 at the end of March, so doing really good in that reading goal. I had a really great reading month, January and March. Not so good in February, but I still read books. I'm really proud of myself. I feel like I'm gonna hit 60 way before December, and I'm just excited to see how many books I actually read this year because I think it's gonna be more. So with that goal, we're doing great. I also had a small kind of personal goal of checking out some more manga. I have the Death Note manga series, which is like right here in my books to read, my series to start this year. I have not read any manga or comics this year, which is really surprising because I read a bunch last year. I was so into them. I've been meaning to reread the first Monstrous and then to finish the Monstrous series, so hopefully I can get that done soon, and hopefully I can also knock out the first 2 volumes of the Death Note manga. So that's something I'm slacking on, but we're hopeful because it's only April and things can only go up from 0, right? The next goal I had is diversifying my reading level. So last year I read a lot of young adult, and while I still love young adult, I had this craving for more adult fantasy, and honestly, I'm looking at my numbers and I'm like half and half. I've literally read 50% adult and 50% YA books this year, and I'm really proud of myself. I will probably end up reading more adult this year, I have a feeling, but there were other YA series and books that I really wanted to get to that I had anticipated for the beginning of the year, and especially Shadow and Bone with the Netflix show coming out. The Gilded Ones and Lore just came out, and I just really wanted to read and review all of those, so I was pretty stoked. If you've seen my spring TBR video, I will link that here too. There are a lot of adult series on there, so I think that my adult number is gonna go up, which is great because, and not solely, but mostly, I have been really enjoying adult fantasy much more lately than YA fantasy. YA fantasy is still fun, but I feel like I'm tending to find the complexity and the richness behind adult fantasy much more enjoyable these days, whereas YA fantasy is still really fun, but it's just different. You know, it's fluffier, it's easier, it's more like comforting, whereas adult fantasy is the thing that I'm really craving. So I'm still really craving that. I'm still really hoping to incorporate more adult fantasy and to keep that going because that's just what I want, and that's what I'm really loving right now. And I think we'll see where I'm at, maybe closer to the middle and the end of the year, and see if I'm still going 50-50 or if adult is winning in this category. The next is diversifying the types of genres that I want to read, and there are some booktubers that are the masters of diversifying all their reading. I am not. I really love fantasy and I tend to stick with it, and especially because there's so much fantasy that I have to get to. I have really not been reading a ton of others. I think I've read 1 nonfiction book and that's it. I haven't read anything except for fantasy and 1 nonfiction book so far this year. But I am prioritizing adult fantasy more than diversifying in other genres right now, so that's probably why I haven't. I am planning on reading a couple sci-fi books, and there are some more nonfiction books. I'm also thinking of dipping my toes into like some straight up romance, but that's probably gonna come in a few months because we'll see. I would need to find like a compelling regular romance to read. So we're still working on her. We're still working on all of that, all right? So we're just gonna give me a break because I've been doing good on everything else so far. And then the next one, and one that I do feel very passionately about, is the self-published works. So a lot of the works that I read are done by mainstream publishing, and a lot of the works that I would like to read and that I have on my TBR have a lot of self-published. So in the first quarter of the year, I read one self-published book by J.P. Harker. It was great. I do want to continue on that series, and that number is just going to go up. Already in April, I've already doubled that number. So that number of self-published works is going to go up. And knowing my interest in a couple of specifically self-publishing authors, I know that my number in that spectrum is just going to go up. So I'm not really worried about it. It's just been a hectic first part of the year where I'm just catching up on all the reads that I wanted to have, but feel very confident in the self-published number for this year. And I'm just so excited because I want to be able to recommend some really amazing and fun self-published works. So stay tuned for that. All right, and then I think one of my last like reading goals in my reading goals video was to read more of my own books and not to borrow from the library as much. This year I haven't been borrowing from the library as much. I have been reading the books that I own. However, I have been buying a lot of books in which then I own them and then I read them. However, because I buy so many more books than I'm able to read, I have significantly increased my physical TBR. Now, I did not set a spending limit or a buying ban for this year, and I'm not planning on it because I don't want to treat myself so badly. However, my TBR is not getting any smaller, and this reading less library, reading more of my own books, I'm not sure what the point is at this point, but we're gonna continue on to try doing that and just reading a lot of the books that I own, even though I keep buying them, because how do you stop buying books? Has anyone discovered this formula? Because I haven't. I have no idea. Then the other two things are two separate videos. One video where I discuss the 11 books that I want to read this year, and the other video where I discuss the 10 series that I want to read this year. So the series video is probably pretty ambitious, but I've done a little bit of damage in both. I feel like I'm not where I want to be, but I've done a little bit in both. So for the 11 books that I want to read this year, I've read 3 out of 11. Those books are Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, and Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. All books that I pretty much really enjoyed, and I'm just so glad that I got to reading them. So I feel like 3 out of 11 isn't so bad. A couple of these I actually have on the docket for the next couple of months. So I feel like I can accomplish either list. It'll probably be the 11 books to read for 2021 because I feel like that's really accomplishable, and a lot of these are really high up on my want to read scale because they're either just so highly rated or I'm just so incredibly curious about them. And then there's one that I want to read next month that I want to do a review on because the sequel for that is coming out next month or in June. So stay tuned because I think that one's going to be really good. It's also adult fantasy and it is set, I think, in a school setting. So I love that trope and I'm very excited. The other video that I did for the series that I want to read, I put 10 series on there and I've fully finished one of those series, and that is the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I had a goal of reading that before the show came out, which the show came out on April 23rd, in case you don't know, and I was able to finish that. I have also put a couple other series in there that I am starting. Like I mentioned, the Death Note manga series that I put in there. I want to read Children of Blood and Bone. I want to read the Poppy War series, which I'm starting really soon. It's also on my spring TBR series list. And then there are a few more on there that I can't think of right now, but I think I'll get to those in the late summer, early fall. But I do feel like I'm slacking on my series to read this year because I feel like I keep switching out which series I'm prioritizing and which series I want to read based on the friend influences, the bookish friend influences, the booktube influences, and everything is just going haywire. So I'm trying to stick to my plans as good as possible because I want to be held accountable. In my mid-year check-in, I want to kind of revise my goals and see if they're still doable, if I'm still interested in the series that I have put down for the year to read, and if I want to add or refine any other goals. One of my goals in my reading goals video was to hone in my taste in fantasy, and I feel like at least for that will be a really great thing to check out in my mid-year check out video to see what I have started to enjoy more and what I've started to notice I'm not into as much. I feel like I've gotten a really good sense of that in the first 3 months, but I feel like I need another 3 to 6 months to get an even better sense of that. And I think booktube and recommendations and reading different types of subgenres and maybe different types of genres in general is really gonna help me hone in exactly what I like. I feel like I should have had more goals, or is that just my type A personality speaking? Either way, that's it for these goals and this video. That's what I had planned at the beginning of the year, and this is what I'm trying to keep track of for the rest of the year. I do have like a little reading journal that I'm keeping track of these goals, and I'm keeping track of the series and the books that I stated that I wanted to read for the year. So I am keeping track of that somewhere on paper, and I'm not forgetting about it. Let me know what books and what series that you committed to reading this year, if you're reading them, if you've gotten to them. Let me know if you're accomplishing your goals, or if you're behind on some of your goals. Let me know if any of our goals align, and maybe we can put in some buddy reads so that we can reach our goals together. If you like this video, please click on the thumbs up button down below. That really helps me out a lot. And if you like this video and you want to see more content, especially about keeping myself accountable and reaching my goals, which there will be more in the next coming months, please click that subscribe button.